Not content with a 29% pay rise, resident doctors, as we're now meant to call junior doctors, have just announced 5 more days of strike action to start on the 17th of December in that dangerous pre-Christmas period. Have they got a leg to stand on? I'm Michael Simmons, the Spectator's economics editor. Welcome to Reality Check. Less spin, more stats. This strike by the BMA, the doctors' union, is going to be the 14th since March 2023. And this comes after, as I say, a 29% pay rise, which is by far the largest in the public sector, more than police, more than teachers, more than people that are collecting our bins. It's fair to say that Wes Streeting, the health secretary, has had enough.
They are, sat in the corner like moaning minnies when actually their members are doing a really good job working with the government to improve patient care and experience.
Now, the BMA claim that doctors' pay has been massively eroded over the years because of inflation. And on the numbers that they put out, that certainly seems to be true. But they use a bit of a strange measure of inflation, which is called RPI. It measures sort of retail prices. And it's pretty obvious why the BMA are picking that number. It's just much larger. But it's an odd measure to use, given that pretty much everyone else in the country is using consumer inflation, CPI. That's what the ONS announces every month. It's what the Bank of England measures their inflation target against. It's what the government uses, and it's what all of you watching and listening would really understand inflation to be. If we use the BMA's measure, RPI, again, they seem completely right. The junior doctor's pay has been eroded by nearly 18%. But if we use CPI, which, as I say, is the much more standard, now accepted measure of inflation, their pay's only gone down by 4.7%. That's a huge difference, 18 compared to 4.7%. But they get an even bigger difference by the fact they've chosen to take 2008 as their base year. If we take another year, let's say 2015-16, the last time there really was major shakeups in the system, again, on their chosen measure, RPI, they've had a pay cut because of inflation of just over 4%. What happens if we look at the CPI measure of inflation, the standard measure? They get a pay increase of nearly 8%. That's way, way higher than most of you in the private sector will have experienced, and indeed many of their public sector colleagues. I'm not even sure if doctors have a case, though, when they compare their base salaries, because again, they want to use this figure, the base salary, and they say that's low compared to the average worker. But almost no junior doctor is just doing the base amount. Many of them get extra payments for being on call, for doing overtime, for having specialisms. And when you add the payments for those in, you get quite different figures. Reality Check has looked at those stats, and you can see that a FY1 doctor, a first-year junior or resident doctor, because of these extra payments, on average, their median earnings are £46,000. Now, the average British worker is on £40,000. So already the junior doctors are better off. But when medicine, really pays off is when they progress through their career. Once they hit the core training level, where, you go into a program perhaps to become a surgeon, their earnings jump to well over £70,000. That's when it becomes quite lucrative to be a doctor. But they don't even really have to wait until then to say they're doing better off than their peers. The Higher Education Statistics Authority looks at how salaries do for people in the first few years of their career compared to what their degree was. And for 2022-23, the last year that we've got figures, graduates from medicine and dentistry really do come out on top. Their average earnings were something like £38,000. That's way ahead of vets, who were only taking home just under £34,000. It's better than engineers, who are just shy of £32,000. And it's way, way better than their counterparts who did law degrees, who are only taking a median earning of something like £25,000. The other thing I think Wes Streeting should think about is how doctors are paid. Why not look at doctors' pensions? Most people in the private sector who have a workplace pension, if they're lucky, their employer will be contributing 5% and you'll be matching that. But for doctors, the employer's contribution is over 20%. So they really do have these huge gold-plated pensions. So Wes Streeting could turn around to the BMA and say, look, we will give junior doctors more money, but it's going to come out of that pension contribution. And we could have a sort of dynamic system where you get paid more at the start of your career, but you have a smaller employer pension contribution. And as you progress, that balance changes so that you've got enough in your pension pot. Could there be a way that the health secretary could do that without it costing much more to the public purse? The BMA have a point on one thing, though, and it's on those core training posts I was talking about earlier. Getting to those posts are what unlock those 70 grand plus salaries that make doctors really wealthy individuals. But if you look at the number of training posts that are available versus applications, there's something quite troubling going on. We're looking at one example, which is surgical training. Now, 10 years ago, there were about 550 posts for something like 1,000 or just over 1,000 applications. So you got a rough 50-50 shot of getting into one of those training posts if you apply. But in the decade since, the number of posts have stayed completely flat, while the number of applications have surged 5 times. So in the last year of data, there were still somewhere between 500 and 600 posts for core surgical training, but there were over 3,000 applications. So, a 5 times difference. So the BMA do have a point that it's getting harder to get into these training posts. That is what moves doctors up their career progression ladder. So maybe they should focus on that and not what they're paid. I'm Michael Simmons. You've been watching Reality Check. And if you're enjoying this content on YouTube, please comment and subscribe and tap the bell so that you never miss an episode. If you're listening to us on your podcast platform, please give us a follow and subscribe as well. Don't forget, we've got a newsletter too that comes out every Friday, and that newsletter is going to keep going all through the Christmas period. All the details of that are on the Spectator website, and the best place to go is spectator.co.uk/realitycheck.